For contact information, if there happens to be any questions about the levy, due to new legal requirements, I know this sounds crazy, we're not allowed to answer them, but we will note, that builds trust, doesn't it? We will make note of the question, and we'll have someone from the committee email you the response. So if any questions, you'll hear me repeat, and then that's because someone's making note, and then you'll have a response via email, as long as you've signed in on the table by the entrance, okay? So on behalf of Edgewood Schools, we want to thank our Community Foundation Church. What a great opportunity to have a free facility with such wonderful electronics to use this evening. And I have to say, before we jump in to the facts that will be shared tonight, I can't tell you how pleased I am to be in a community with such support. I've worked several years, we won't say how many. Hopefully the lights aren't too bright, you can't count the circles, but a long time. But I can tell you that I've never been in a community with such strong pride and support. And we'll get into some of that a little bit later. But when there is a student or child in need, you guys rally together and circle and take care of them. And that means a lot to us, so thank you right off the bat. So, Scott, you can jump in and help me with this slideshow. We want to talk about some facts. And since I started with the community, I want to share with you what some parents were saying about our school district. I was in a room with about 30 people early on in the school year and asked them to describe Edgewood School District with just one word. And this is called a Mentimeter results, and you can tell that the longer, wider the font is, that means it had the most response. So when I look at this, it tells me that we're of a community with such strong pride, traditions. It's all around family, heritage, home. That gave me goosebumps. I mean, where else would you want to send your child than someone that celebrates words like that? Family, heritage, tradition, pride. And actually, we put out a survey about a few weeks ago. And on the survey, these are not the total results because we're going to calculate them next week or at the end of this week. But so far, as of Monday, we had 562 responses. And Pam, about how many families do we have in our community? Where's Pam? Oh, there you are. So to get about 25 responses, 25%, that's a pretty strong response when it comes to surveys. Usually they say count on about 10%. We do have some work to do, but I'm pleased to see that our strongest areas were around kids are safe and happy. That means a lot. Parents feel that they're involved in their child's education. They're comfortable helping their child with their schoolwork at home. Let's go ahead and move, and we're going to go back to this in just a moment. Yeah, thank you. About 71% feel that school encourages parental involvement. About 68% feel that communication's effective. Now, personally, I want to see 80% or higher on these. So for baseline data, this is good data. We know we have some work to do in communication. I also wanted to get community perception on if there has to be some cuts with our course offerings and our scheduling, where would we begin? So what the survey's telling us so far is we need school resource officers in every building. So we're going to reevaluate that. And we'll have to do it. We still have to get to a 1.2 million budget reduction this year, but that just means it'll come from someplace else, not that. So that's a discussion with the board. Also, we want to protect our advanced placement courses. We want to protect, it's interesting, the most popular electives at the high school so far were around social studies and English. Now, if that doesn't put the competition on with some other departments, I don't know what will, but that's of interest. Also, a question was asked, if we have to go into additional cost-saving mode, would there be an appetite, and that's not the way it's worded, but that's what it means, to go to a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week? That would mean an additional 30 minutes on 4 days, Students wouldn't report one day. What that saves is transportation costs. It saves you're not feeding, you're not operating your buildings. So there's a pretty significant savings there. Now, that would have to be negotiated. You're not allowed just to jump to that. But so far, parents aren't opposed to that. It was like a 40 to 60 something so far. Again, survey's not over. Don't go in there and double vote, but we still will go back and look at that. Okay, so that's what our community is saying. So takeaways are, we got to get to 80%. Our strongest are around parental involvement, comfort, safe, happiness. We have some work to do on curriculum. We have some work to do on communication. If we can go to the next slide. So, again, I've been in Edgewood for a few months, so I'm trying to collect as much data on what does our graduate profile look like. We graduate, about 50% of our graduates attend college. Now I have to tell you, prior to COVID, that declined. It's back up to 50. It was down to 40 something, and that makes sense. So we have ranged a little bit over the years in the 40 something to 50% attending college. Now that doesn't mean all 50% graduate in 4 years, but that's who is attending right after graduation, which tells us the other half is in career mode, right? So what are we doing around beefing up career opportunities for our graduate? Those are questions we need to propose and answer. I'm pleased to share, I forgot to mention, about 5% immediately enlist in the military. And this year, we had 9 of our seniors receive scholarships for college. That's pretty impressive. They were all around athletics. And we also have 2 National Merit semifinalists so far. It's very impressive. Lori, how do you become a National Merit semifinalist? Is there ACT score and what else? Oh, Mr. Gagan's right here in front of me. Go ahead.
It's actually the PSAT. There's a cut score on the PSAT they take as juniors, and that determines whether they're national merit.
Okay, so obviously they're working very hard, studying very hard, and performing very well. All right, let's move on. When we think about where we've been in Edgewood around academics, our state report card tells us we need to do better. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think in a few minutes. We need to beef up our community perception. We know that, but however, we do know that people take pride in sending their students here, and they appreciate the family value. Edgewood is known for fine arts, have received several band and choraleer awards, and also known for their athletic performance. Look at the number of conference champions, as well as the number of qualified players for All-State and Athlete of the Year within our league. So those are some nice takeaways as far as the profile of our students. You can go ahead. So I'm going to invite Patty up. She's going to talk about our current situation on finances. I will tell you, I joined the team in late November, early December, and at the board meeting, the very first board meeting or 2 I attended, I heard deficit spending. Now, being an outsider at the time, I have to be honest with you, I was a little skeptical. I was like, how in the world are we in deficit spending in the second year of a 5-year forecast? There's a reason, folks, and Patty's going to talk a little bit about that.
So before I get started here, this is my 17th year in the district. I actually started many years ago subbing as a bus driver. I've worked as a custodian. I actually left a payroll job and came in as a district secretary to one of the assistant principals, moved to registration, and then on to EMIS. My home that I live in, I've been there 31 years. I'm a lifer here. My mom also drove a bus for 31 years here and retired. I have connections here. Just, again, I have to reiterate what Miss Spivey said. We're so tightly knit here. I don't know, it's home, and it's hard to draw that line with personal connections and work. But I came into this, like I said, I moved up from EMIS very much involved in the data. I did the state reporting, looked at all the special education numbers, gifted numbers, very much everything that I was involved in touched one of two things, which was either the report card or the state funding. So started digging a little more, worked with some other administrators and decided I wanted to take a step up, and that's the reason that I went back, got my treasurer's license, and decided to jump in. I did not anticipate in year one stepping in and having to take on this huge deficit spending that we're in, and obviously the elephant in the room that now we're facing a levy. So just wanted to share a little bit with you. The deficit spending, it didn't just come on this year. It's been going on for a few years. Back maybe 3 years ago, we started getting some funding for COVID, and we all remember those times. But that kind of bailed us out, if you will, for a little while, and kind of help us get over that hump, if you will. We spent a lot of those dollars, about $5 million of them. About, I would say 75% of that we used to cover salaries and benefits for our staff members in the district to avoid making these cuts. I think about something that one of our board members said. It just wouldn't have been a humane thing to do in those times when, people were struggling to do that at that time, but we're at a time now that we have to look at things a little bit different. So we anticipate being, you can see up there, and I didn't bring my glasses, so forgive me. We're about $1.6 million deficit spending this year based on our 5-year forecast. That gets filed in November. It will get filed again in May. I'm plugging away working on that right now. We have done a lot in this district to make some cuts. You'll hear more about those later if you haven't already heard about them. But we're hoping that has a substantial impact on this next 5-year forecast that we're going to be filing next month, and hope that we're not as bad. But right now, we were set to deficit spend $1.6 million this year. And again, across that 5-year forecast, it just continually grows. Out in that 5th year, we're $8 million deficit spending that year. It was like $21.9 million deficit spending across the next 5 years. So again, we've got it highlighted up here. Some of the things that have really hit us hard: inflation. You've seen that in your homes. We're paying $3, $4, at one time closer to $5 for gas or gallon of milk, $4 or $5 for a dozen eggs. We're all experiencing that, and the school is not exempt from that. So we just don't have that purchasing power that we did in years past. So everything that we do is costing us more money as well, just like you. One of the things that I want to point out here, salaries and benefits are about 85% of a school district's budget. We've seen huge jumps, especially in the benefits. Each year it just continues to go up. So the cost to do business just costs more. So wanted to point out one more thing, and that's the Rockies Pipeline. They have filed an appeal on their values. We thought we were going to get all this money from them. We are very much hopeful that somewhere down the line we're going to recoup some of those monies, but right now it's just, we're not seeing it in the next couple years. So we're losing about $550,000 a year while they're paying at this tender rate. So again, you take that across a 5-year forecast, we're looking at least $2.5 million in lost revenue because of that pipeline. So if you go on to the next slide. Again, this is just showing you here how the money is spent here in the district. Obviously, the big one there is salaries and benefits, about 85%. We have some purchase services there. It's another decent-sized slice of the pie. That is for contracted services, professional development, special education needs, things like that. One of those smaller slices there, and something that we're trying to work on together here, we have not had a curriculum adoption budget. It's been a hot topic there. We feel like we need that, so we need to change the way that this pie looks moving forward, and we're working very hard to do that. But if you go on to the next slide, again, here's something else. we spend less than a lot of the districts around here, the cost to educate per pupil, as well as the state average. We're below what the state average is to educate a pupil. And go to the next slide. This here, again, it's highlighting what we've done. We've cut more than $800,000 out of our budget already. Still looking $1 to $2 million more to try and get us a little closer to this fiscal solvency. And as I pointed out before, we've had these COVID funds, kind of got us across the bridge, if you will. Wanted to point out another thing. I've gotten a lot of questions on open enrollment. We do get funding for these open enroll kids, and it's significant if you can see that. And then these grants. We have done a lot. We have our staff members, and kudos to them for doing so. They get out here and they work. We get some federal grants and we get state grants. It was mentioned at our board meeting even last night, one of our PE teachers went out and got a grant for $20,000. We just got another significant security grant that we learned about today. So even our staff members are doing everything that they can do to try and go out and get grant awards to bring additional monies into the school district beyond what our federal and state dollars give us. So if you go to the next slide. Again, so like I said, we have on the ballot a 1% earned income tax. Another question I'm getting a lot is, what exactly is that? And I only want to point out because I've heard some comments from some people out in the community that they've talked to other school districts. Talawanda, for example, has an income tax. That is a traditional income tax. So it doesn't matter. You're going to pay regardless. What Edgewood has put on the ballot is an earned income tax. This is the W-2 form earnings. So wages, tips, things like that, but not Social Security, not 401k. You actually have to earn this money before you would be subject to this tax. So we've put it up there as well. You're welcome to go out and look on the Ohio Department of Taxation's website. They've got a breakdown there and can be even more specific if you have questions about that. But I want to get that out there that this is an earned income tax that Edgewood has put on the ballot. So if you go to the next slide. And why this was decided, our board got together. We have about almost 13,000 voters within the Edgewood City School District boundaries. When we went and looked at these addresses, only 30% of those homes actually have students that come into the school district. They could be retirees. We don't know what that looks like, but that very much played a key role in the decision with the board to opt for this earned income tax because they thought that would be, a more fair way to approach it. So just want to put that out there. That's the reason that the board decided to go this route. So if you go to the next slide, and I'll let Ms. Spivey take this one over.
Okay, and I just want to recap before we jump into this. So I had someone say, Kelly, how did we get here? And I want to say this is not anyone's fault. Think about inflation. You would have never thought that inflation would have increased as much as it has just in the last year, that alone in the last decade. School districts get unfunded mandates. And I could go on and talk about 200 of them. You don't have enough time, nor would you care, but let me just talk about one. We have the state mandated assessments. A lot of money goes into the interventions. So when the state says, this is what you need to measure, and when your students don't hit the measurement mark, then you need to intervene. Money's not provided for those interventions. So think about it. If a student needs additional work, that's either in small group, it's through reteaching, it could be after school, it could be summer school. We don't get additional funds for that. So that's an example of an unfunded mandate. That's extremely costly. So I want to give kudos to the previous administration and board. We would have been even more than $1.6 million in deficit if it hadn't been from the previous cuts put in place. We might not have just shared them so publicly. But what we do know is we cannot continue with this trajectory. We can't continue on deficit spending. It's just like home. Something has to give, right? So that's why we are where we are. I just want to say again, it's not someone specific's fault. It's just who would ever predict inflation? Who would ever predict what's the next unfunded mandate down the pike? Who would ever predict that we were promised XYZ in dollars, may it be from Rocky Pipeline or from state funding formula, and all of a sudden there's a change to it. So you can do your math and do your finances just like at home, and then all of a sudden it's like you're in an emergency and someone's ill and not getting paid. You didn't count on that. That's why we are where we are. Does that make sense? All right, so another piece that could be a little boring, I'm going to try to go fast on this, is that I have to tell you, as a superintendent, I'm in this world all the time, but I have to remind myself, why are we constantly going to our public and funding schools? I wish it was funded by federal department, state department. Matter of fact, they're the ones putting the mandates on us and creating the laws, right? It'd be nice for their budget to support their goals. Unfortunately, in 1825, it was deemed in the state of Ohio that this burden would be put on property tax holders, owners. So that's our legislation, not the schools. We would love to be funded differently. Matter of fact, just to give you a little background, people that go into education are typically humble servants. To get out and ask for things, we're not marketers and business people. It's really hard. So it doesn't even make sense that this is even funded this way, and it doesn't fit the type of personalities that go into this business. In 1934, the state of Ohio saw this wasn't working. So then they added a 3% sales tax to try to fix it. Guess what? In 1975, it's still not working. People will say, well, what about all the lottery dollars that, in Ohio with the racinos and the lottery, schools must be inundated with all these additional funds. Do you know that since the racinos were implemented in Ohio, this is quick math, each student has received about $50 from all of that per student. You can't even buy a textbook for that. So think about it, you'll hear, oh, they're not spending their lottery money. Well, we are. It goes very quickly when you get that little bit of amount. In 1992, matter of fact, my sister works in this district. It was in Perry School District up north, right on the lake. There was an equitable funding suit. They have a lot of money that they get from nuclear power plant? What is the power plant? Help me out. Is it? Yeah, the power plants? Okay, well, those power plants, do you know they've never even had to go to a levy since like 1970? They generate so many dollars that they're rolling in it in their district, and they're able to do all these creative interventions and innovations in their district. Well, people around them said this isn't fair, and they entered into a lawsuit. So in 1992, it was deemed that was unconstitutional, that we fund our schools so differently, and we put the ownership on property taxpayers. It still hasn't been fixed. Can you imagine going to court and the ruling goes a certain way and you wouldn't have to be liable to do what they told you to do? I don't quite understand that. And then in 2005, just to give you some history, that was the last time Edgewood was on the ballot for new money. Now, I understand that's been renewed several times, a renewal, but new money was 2005. You're shaking your head no? Go ahead, jump in here.
How about 2020?
Wasn't that a renewal? What was in 2020?
It was called something else. It was not called a renewal because it was added all the other houses that were involved.
Well, you can get on the Butler County site and see that. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it's in the next slide or not. I think I don't. Keep going. Let's go to another one. We'll go back to that. Keep going. Okay, nope. You can move back. There's actually, I can tell you that we did a summary of the levies, and it talked about how many renewals and how many new and how many bond, and it's right there on the Butler County site. And I will tell you, it's not listed as new. It's not listed as new. But is your email on there?
I don't know.
Okay,
Replace it?
I'm gonna go look, so. Did you sign in? Because I wanna, okay, we're gonna chit chat, because I wanna show you what I have, and then I love debates, so you show me what you have, and I'll show you what I have, and we can sit down and talk about it. All right, so from the information I have from the Butler County site, new money last was 2005. I hear a discrepancy here. I'll go back and look. All right, let's keep moving. Now, some people will say, and I'm going to let Patty talk about this, but people will say, well, my taxes are increased on my property. Well, there's something about inside millage, outside millage, and House Bill 920. That's about all I know. Patty, how does that work?
So this actually, I believe this came into play back in 1976. House Bill 920, it's there to protect the taxpayer as well as the tax collector. So what happens, what you vote in, that is not going to change. So if your property tax goes up, they change the millage to what they call an effective millage for the school district. So you're not getting any more, just the same as if your taxes go down, we're not going to get any less. That voted millage is what we're going to get. Nothing more, nothing less, because they give us an effective millage rate.
Okay, so the next piece is just some facts. So the state of Ohio determined our funding model was unconstitutional in 1992. It's never changed. The state began rolling back property taxes, trying to help, and it put a greater burden on our property owners. A normal school cycle levy cycle is really deemed for about every 4 years. And the rationale behind that is that because inflation will increase. So anytime you're going and saying, I need a 1% or I need this many mills on my property, it's really determined for the next 4 years. So the fact that, may it be 205 or 220, he's looking it up right now. Let's go with the 205. We've done pretty well not to ask for new money. It certainly has lasted more than 4 years. So, also another piece to understand is that inflation has increased 176%, I want to say, not inflation, health insurance increases have increased 176% since the last time we asked for new money. You can also see that inflation's increased just 7% in the last year, and inflation has increased 50% since 2005. These statistics were taken from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let's keep moving. So, how do we plan to move forward? Well, we want to reevaluate our strategic plan in the fall. We have an outside facilitator that's coming in free of charge, by the way. He's coming in free of charge, and he's going to work with us to see where are we. Do we still have those same beliefs, values, and norms, and how does that line up? We know, with or without a revised strategic plan, we need to increase our community engagement. We want to increase our transparency. We want to increase student learning, and we know we have to move forward with a fiscal solvent plan. So no matter what happens in May, we know that we had to cut $1.2 million just to strike towards that 1.6 deficit that we're on this year. No matter what the results are in May, that 1.2 is not coming back. That's just to get us somewhat flat, if I can even say that, close to it. And then, depending on the results of May, we either have to make another $1 million cut or we don't. But that's basically our fiscal solvent plan. What'd you find, sir? What? Yeah, that's a substitute levy is a renewal.
Because of new homes.
Okay. So explain that to everybody.
What it is,
Here, I'm putting you on the spot.
no, that's all right.
We're
What it
corrected.
is,
We're corrected.
what it is a substitute levy was done in 2020 to include all the new homes that have been built in the area that weren't included before. Where, like the people that already had a house here, their prices went down a little bit, but they also increased overall because they included.
They included more houses.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and I did read that. You're exactly right. I read that and thought substitute was renewal, so I do remember reading that. You are right, it was a substitute. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I stand to be corrected. New money was 220 to get additional funding, and here we are 223. We still have been, addressing the deficit spending. Matter of fact, when I looked at the 5-year forecast before this one, in 2018, it was earmarked to be around $8 million deficit. So previous administration's done a good job. The fact that we're only at a 1.6 right now, but we cannot go to a 2.8 and have that continue to be magnified. So that's why we're trying to tighten up our belts, look at what we can do less of, and there's also some things we need to do more of. For instance, in preschool, we have some gaps there around learning, and we know we need to hire a counselor. So you may see some additions, but you're going to see a lot more eliminations just to address that 1.6. What questions do you have? Yes. 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 Yes, and I eliminated that slide, but you're going to jump in and correct what I'm wrong. The previous school year eliminated an administrator. We eliminated two SEL positions. Thank you. Social emotional learning teachers. So thank you for correcting me on that, because we're bad about that in education. 2 teachers, but I want to say it was like 12 positions altogether. So we're going to get your exact answer on that. Matter of fact, go one. No, I just eliminated it today. Never mind. I wasn't here for that, but I can't say that. No, I know there was a counselor eliminated at the preschool, and the preschool primary shared a counselor, so that was one position. There was 2 social emotional. I believe there was 2 to 4 paraprofessionals, high school counselor, business manager, IT support specialist, 2 elementary teachers, an English teacher. Yes, ma'am. Monitoring of what? 2 lunchroom monitors. And a special education position at the middle school. So that was a lot. That's yes, yes. And this at the end of this year, we're earmarked for another 1.2 million, no matter what. And we're looking to revise our transportation schedule. That's going to be about $200,000 to $250,000 savings by going from a 3-tier pickup system, meaning high school's picked up, then middle school's picked up separately, elementary separately. By going to a 2-tier, we could save about $250,000. But the downfall is it puts middle school, high school together, coming in at one time, going out at another. But that is a savings. The other is that we looked at rifting, meaning a reduction in force, to 11 teaching positions. We had a school resource officer on there, but that's most likely coming back due to community input. We are looking at reducing some additional cafeteria hours. We are also looking at reducing some additional paraprofessionals. And that, what did I miss in our 1.2?
I want to add on here too, and again, you can go back to the slide where we discussed where your money actually goes. Just keep in mind that about 85% of the school district budget goes to salaries and benefits. As much as I sit and go through requisitions every day and say, do we really need 12 boxes of crayons, or can we cut this back to 8 boxes of crayons? Just keep in mind, that's not going to put a dent in this. So when you're talking cut $1.2 million, a few packs of crayons is just not going to cut it. We're not happy about this. We hate it, but at the end of the day, we know very quickly we have to reduce $1.2 million. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but you talk about this 5-year forecast. You have to be able to go out 3 years. We barely did that, and that's why we're cutting now to get out into that next year, because we're okay to file in May. When it comes time to file again in November, if we don't do this now, we cannot certify that budget. If we don't certify that budget, you go into fiscal watch and then fiscal emergency. We do not want the state to come in and take over. And Kelly and I have both vowed that's not going to happen on our watch. Whatever it takes that we have to do, we're not going to let that happen. So again, just want you to keep that in the back of your mind. We do not want to lose our people. Like I said, I've been here for a long time. I love this district. I love the staff members. I can't think of a greater bunch of people that I want to be with. I don't want to give up or lose anybody. Just at the end of the day, how do we get to that 1.2? Again, Ms. Spivey sent out these surveys asking for your opinions. We encourage you, stay involved so that your voice is heard, whether it be our course offerings,
Transportation.
whatever that looks like to you. What is
Extracurricular.
important? Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's 1.2 million. So we want your feedback. We want you to share what that looks like to you and how you think we should look at this moving forward. Just like I said, I know the big portion of our budget goes to salary and benefits. So when you have to get there in a very short period of time, like I said, a few boxes of crayons or pencils or paper, that's not going to get us there.
So when I think about per pupil spending in comparison to neighboring districts and the state average, the one slide you saw that we're spending less, I think you see that in the results as well. We need to find a way, and we will do this, increase our measurements. I'm trying to increase effectiveness, student learning, while being very cautious of the costs we're putting in there. So when we go to move forward on new things, you may hear things like pilots. We want to collect some data to say, are we going to get our bang for our buck out of this program? You're also going to hear, we're going to be moving some money out of personnel and into curriculum adoption. Our students deserve that. So we have a lot of balls in the air and a lot of work to do about how do we increase learning while decreasing spending, but also being effective. We don't want to decrease it at the point where it's a risk to our students. Have you guys done a study with Ross at all? I haven't studied, but I'm very familiar with Ross. They're right there. They might be a little bit worse, but yes. Yes, but they spend a lot more per pupil. Yes. Oh, nope. I'll tell you, I'm right on that one. I'll bet. I think we're like 10,000 something. They're almost 12. They're over 11,000 per pupil. Yes, we're less than any surrounding district. Yes.
One of the rules was, correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, the schools that didn't give as much, like say New Miami,
Didn't get as much.
didn't give as much.
Yeah.
They got more money from the state.
Yes, they're higher poverty level. That's why.
Oh, it's not because of the amount of money they got from everybody else, from the taxes.
I'm not aware of that. They get more money from the state and federal because of their poverty level. I'm not aware about what they pay in taxes. I can't answer that. Yeah. They get more from the state. So I will tell you, I was in Huber Heights doing an interim job last spring. Their poverty level was about 75%. Their state and federal funding was extremely high. Coming from Butler County, I wasn't used to that. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize the ratio of poverty to the dollars. Yeah. Good question. Yes, ma'am. Would you like a microphone? Okay. Okay. I hear a but. Go ahead. We are. You will hear administrators. We are cutting. We don't have as many administrators to cut as we do staffing, but we always start with, we cut last year, which administrator? High school administrator. This year was business manager we've not replaced. Good question. No, I'm with you, and I believe you're right. Yes, I'm going to let Patty jump in. I know that one of the 212 bond, I believe it is ready to.
Yeah,
You
I
talk
think
about
that
our bonds.
falls-
One's getting ready to fall off, but the renewal property might be what you're asking about as well. Yes. Yes.
Is that 25?
Yes. Yes. Good question. I think what I'm hearing you say is, when will some other taxes fall off? Yep. Good question. And before she jumps in, I would love to stand here and tell you something that we're not going to have to renew again. But no, I'm not telling you that. Please put on the record, I did not say that. This is the problem. Do you remember me saying, who would think we'd have inflation costs, more unfunded mandates, Rocky Pipeline not giving us the money we thought we were building into our budget? It's because of the unknowns that I can't predict. I can't tell you that the last renewal is going to fall off, but I'm looking at you eye to eye and saying we're going to do everything possible to be frugal spenders, increase learning. We want to be effective, but not just spend to be spending. We need to see it in some data. But I can't tell you that's going to fall off. I would love for it to, but Patty's going to tell you the exact numbers as far as when's the bond coming off.
We do know that we have a bond falling off in 24, and then the other tax falls off in 25. That's the one that I'm getting the question about, are we going to have to renew that? I'm going to say what Ms. Spivey said. I cannot tell you right here today that we're not going to renew that.
But neither want to come forward and say we have to renew it either.
No, because we don't know. So again, if this Rocky Pipeline money comes through, that would be huge for our district. If this levy goes through, that would be huge for our district. The budget with the state even, they were doing a phase-in. The last that we looked at, they were funding us based on 2018 data, coming across in 6 phases to increase that. I was in Columbus last week. We have a lot of school district administrators, legislators. They're fighting for the schools and doing what they can and saying, you're just not funding enough. You expect all of these things, but you don't want to give us the money to do it. There's a hard push in Columbus right now to try and get this brought up. So we're hoping that they come back and say, we're going to start funding you on that 22 data. Until legislation comes through, we don't want to count on what we don't have. But I will tell you, if there's a way that we cannot do that, we will not do that. But again, we could have COVID again, you know it.
And let me tell you something we're seeing. I was out of public schools for about 4 years. I did professional development in the time between here and my last stay in a district. And I can't tell you the increase of mental health needs by just the 4 years I was out. And again, I know COVID was hard, and I have friends that are in the medical field saying, we do not have enough medical providers to deal with the needs we have. Can you imagine the schools? It's almost requiring a whole different type of training that we didn't have in our education. So I'm also looking at you and saying, I don't know what unfunded mandates will come down the pike on that. I would support that. We have a need, and no one wants to ever deal with a suicide in their district, but I'm telling you, the needs of our youngsters are great. And I will tell you that I think the needs of some of our families are great, and I wish we could do more around that. Yes, you just keep rolling. No, don't apologize. That's what we're here for. Absolutely. No, absolutely. You go for it. Yes. Yes. It's gonna keep us, I'm gonna let Patty answer that.
We actually worked with the Ohio Department of Taxation. They have a lot more data than what we actually have here at the school. And just talking and networking with other people, I'm not gonna lie, I was concerned about going with the earned income. Like I said, I've been here for a long time. My family's, this is something new for us. But going back and looking at what's driving here, we also understand the population of the people that we actually have here in this community, knowing that only 30% of the homes actually have kids coming into the school. That was huge for me. And I've talked with some of my colleagues and things that they don't have kids in the school here right now, but they did before, you know, and it's paying it forward. I don't have kids in this district anymore. Whether I worked here or not, I'm going to pay it forward. I feel like we all win. You know,
But Patty, would you want to talk about what the average or mean income is and what that would generate? And I think what she's asking is how would that compare if we were on a mill property? Depends on your salary versus what you own. So if you don't own property, of course, yes, it will.
And it was equivalent. That's what I was getting ready to say. We worked with the Ohio Department of Taxation. When we very first started looking at this, I'm wanting to say, and without having that with me, I think we were looking when we started at 8.32 mills, which quickly went to 9 mills. And then by the time we had everything ready to go, they're saying, okay, 10 mills. We don't know if that's acceptable with what our community thinks.
And if you own a lot of property but make less salary, the property is going to be the bigger hit. If you make more salary and less property, it just depends on what your situation is.
situation.
Did you have a question? The average income? Yes. Do for our budget. What do we anticipate to collect? First of all, we don't
Should've
collect for
brought that with
18
me.
months. What do we anticipate to collect in the 18 months in January 2025?
I didn't bring that with me. So if this goes through, I can tell you that would be April. It takes 18 months to collect on a full cycle. I'm wanting to say it was 4 million. I should have brought that with. We had a bigger presentation and we deleted out slides trying to condense it to not make it too long.
We can email that out.
I am happy to do that and send you all the documentation I have from the Ohio Department of Taxation and what we filed and whatnot. I think the big thing at the end of the day, when we worked with them, that's what they told us we would have. So we were looking at a 10 mil levy or a 1% earned income. And then working with the board, we went back and, again, studied our population, you know, who's affected by it, the kids that come into the household. And you had a good point back there. If we would put on only the property tax, we do have a lot of rental property in this area now. So those individuals wouldn't have been subject to the tax. So, again, this is all new for us. We have not done this before. We're not sure where.
So, Patty, what you're saying is you believe it's going to generate about $4 million
think
in
so, but-
January 2025, but you would feel better to confirm that.
I absolutely
and
would.
Put your email down. She's going to confirm that.
So that very first
good.
distribution that we'll get, I can tell you they've already told me in April would be the first time, and we'll only see 5.9% of it. So this might put it in perspective. If this would go through and you would go in and have your employer start deducting your 1%, they collect it and then they send it in quarters. You know, maybe your employer doesn't get it set up right away. It falls a little bit behind. You pay after that quarter, so we wouldn't get it until the second quarter. That's why they're telling us 18 months or 6 quarters before we would actually see a full collection
But
of
you
it.
definitely want to set it up so you're not caught off guard.
Absolutely. That's what I was saying. I think that's about $4 million, but I want to get that and send it out because I did not bring that with me today, and I don't want to give you false information. Yep.
I believe it's 4 million.
We do appreciate that. Yeah. It was equivalent. When we looked at, yes, so when we went and worked with the Ohio Department of Taxation, they give us the mills and the equivalent in a earned income tax. And again, they have all the tax data. They know who pays and where you are. And so we worked with the Ohio Department of Taxation to get an equivalent.
Good questions. What else? Because we know inflation will continue and costs will continue. And the districts, there are, I want to say 1/3 of our school districts in the state of Ohio have income taxes that support the schools. And their results are, it's a permanent way to fund. I mean, you saw the rules and that we have to go back out every 4 years, and we never know where those random arrows are. So it's a good way to fund. What we said, inflation, unfunded mandates, and unexpected costs. Yes, yes. I'm very familiar with Talawanda. Go ahead. I can answer those questions. Go ahead. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah. I will tell you in Talawanda, when the income tax was put on, not earned, which I know the board really wanted to go back and change that to an earn, but the perception was they were afraid they would lose it. I will tell you that when Jim Rowan, the treasurer, put that on the ballot in 2003-04, it's one of those 2 years, he said we'll be back in 4 years for more. Do you know that the whole time I was there, I retired in 2018, we never went back? So I disagree that they continue to go back. Yes, they are now, but they did not from 2004 to 2018. You just heard what we've been doing. We don't have a pyramid, but you heard us say we made 800,000 costs and what they were. We just made another 1.2 that kicks in the fall, and then we will have to go forward with another 1 million. You also heard me say that we want to increase performance and decrease costs, and we will be using pilot data to determine what we purchase, and we will use ongoing data to determine what we keep.
You go ahead.
Now, you live in Talawanda and you're concerned about this? Oh, I thought you said you lived in Talawanda. Gotcha. I was going to say. Go ahead. Okay.
For this income tax, for example, I go to school all the time
Mm-hmm.
for this, that, and the other. That goes on my income. The company puts it on my income as this is extra money.
Because you're earning.
Oh.
Do
Are
you
you like on
file
a
W-2?
military? Are you?
That's earning.
It's kind of a benefit I get where I work.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And when I go to school,
They put that as an earning, that's why. Gotcha.
so that is considered income with you guys.
As long as you're earning additional money. Now, not your retirement or pensions, because that's not additional.
Okay.
Would you file a
Wages.
W-2 based on that information? Like an SD 100?
I have to do extra forms to do some of that stuff. But with that said, on the 401k,
Mm-hmm.
look into that too.
Mm-hmm.
For example, say I retire 5 years.
Yes. He's talking about 401k. He's going to retire in 5 years from now. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to start drawing that money then. Will I have to pay that 1% on that money?
I actually sent that specific question to the Ohio Department of Taxation, including 401k and Social Security, and they told me, no, that is not an earned income tax. That is not earned income. Yes, ma'am.
When your pension check comes through the state FERS system,
Mm-hmm.
is that considered earned?
That's a retirement.
That's your retirement
That's
benefit.
a retirement. It's not a W-2 form.
We have some questions back here.
When
You've
I
been
asked,
very
they said it
patient.
had to be an earned income.
We have a question. We're going to move to the back of the room a little bit.
Okay, 30% of the students come from Trenton.
30% of the homeowners have students that come to our school district.
Okay. So 70%, where's the, where's the other 70%?
Well, could be retired, could be, actually our average age person, I believe we were told was 48 to 52 that lives in our community. Did I hear that
Is that
correctly?
right? Okay, it wasn't, it's not a younger crowd, it's,
We've got kids coming in from other areas.
Open enrollment, yes. We get per pupil expenditure from them. They're not charged tuition, we get head count for them. So they get the same, we get the same funding for any Edgewood student as we get, they're considered now an Edgewood student. So we have increased students, therefore increased per pupil money coming from state and federal. Now, the question becomes this. No, their taxes will not go up. So, yes, they're not charged 1% income. That's the question. You're correct. They are not. Only people that live in this community. Now, I will tell you this. This has been a real bone of contention among even some of our staff because it's making class sizes higher. Sometimes students might have greater need. So we are going to continue to do open enrollment because it does fund, it gives us alternative dollars, which helps us fund our staff. But we're not going to take them at the same number necessarily as what we have before. We pushed our open enrollment deadline up a month. We're going to be sitting down using a matrix around needs, class size, where we are per grade level, and then families will be informed in June. They can reapply in August after we know who's Edgewood kids that need placement. So that's a roundabout about open enrollment, but no, they do not pay 1% because they do not live in this community. But they do pay school fees, they pay everything else, and we do get the head count and count them as our own. No, they never have been. No, I will tell you lunch charges. Do you remember that memo? Our lunch charges have gone from almost a $50,000 debt down to around 10.
it was 13,000 yesterday.
So that is chipping away, thanks to many of our parents, thanks to our local churches, and thanks to our PTO. School fees continue to be a deficit in many districts just because of the state of affairs. And no, there are certain things we can do around graduation, but it doesn't catch them until they're older. Yes. Yes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, they get tested just like our own. They're treated they're considered our own. No. We're not allowed. That's illegal. You're not allowed to legally look at that data. But we are allowed to legally look at our class sizes, look at past performance, if they've been a high ticketed item because of discipline. As long as we don't take anyone thereafter, that's legal. Does that make sense? So when enrollment forms come in, they're dated, timed, and stamped.
This also works as a,
Not overall, but in some populations, yes. But overall, we're still getting more money because we had this
like
conversation.
800,000.
We had this conversation behind closed doors, like maybe we should stop all of it. But we would have had to cut more teachers by cutting all open enrollment. But there's some things we can do differently, and we're looking at that. We have about 200, 150 to 200.
There's more than 200.
Elisa, how many open enrollment students do we have?
It's a
We're at
higher
300.
number.
So think about that. 300 times how much from the state and federal?
72, 61.
That's a significant amount of alternative funds. Now, again, you legally can't say I'm taking you and not you and that kind of thing. So once you stop accepting, you stop accepting everybody thereafter, and that's the tricky part. And we do need to be a little bit more cautious of class size and not just accepting everybody that comes through our doors.
We also have students that open and roll out. Being in EMIS, I monitored and tracked this before I moved into this position. But teachers who work at Monroe that live here, they take their students with them. That's lost revenue for us. Allowing students in kind of supplements, but I can tell you the difference between open enrollment out and open enrollment in netted us $800,000. It's huge. And again, like Ms. Spivey said, it would be more lost staff if we completely eliminated open enrollment. This is also a benefit to our staff members. If I'm a teacher here, I want that benefit to bring my kids to school with me here. And a majority
Just to give
of
you
our-
a little information, I have one granddaughter on open enrollment, and I said to behind closed doors, let's just stop all open enrollment. And they were like, no, wait a minute, because, I was thinking maybe that would be the answer, but we would have had to cut more teachers. But I think the issue is, and I think Sandy Johnson, our union rep, would agree with me, the issue is we just can't accept everyone. We have to really look at class size, have a cutoff mark. We can always go back in August and notify families if they want last minute option in, but we need to be a little bit more cautious on that. Yes, thank you, Scott. I'm kind of like just floating around. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes.
Revenue, I don't want to talk.
Okay. The issue is the 24% property tax that's increased that's on the table for discussion. We know that most likely might go through. What does all that mean? And we don't see 24%. We don't see that. You know that, right? You do. You feel it, but. But you're also going to get bond money back shortly, by the time you see that, I hope. You know what, this is not a perfect, I'm looking at you, I get it. We all pay taxes. We all are in the same boat. The question just becomes, how do you want to define education for this community? And it's not personal. It's our community. It's our kids. How do you want to define it? And we'll make it work. Yes, instructional fees. We just had a board meeting last night. Instructional fees have not increased in this district, at least what I'm hearing is the last decade. Is that true?
maybe like $5.
So they've been around 50, 55 for elementary. I'm using that as an example. High school's more because of elective courses and the type of calculators. I'm not talking about that. Do you know it costs in some grade levels, not all grade levels, the expense to the district is more like $116 to $120 per child. So we're not even charging near what the district is expensing. So we are looking at an increase in school fees. That discussion will be on the May board meeting. Any other, depending on outcome, we could be looking at increase in pay to play. But that's not necessarily happening. It just depends on outcomes. Yes, ma'am.
Activities.
Yes. Purchase services. Our tier 2. We do get additional money for IEP students. Anytime we need additional, we might hire additional paraprofessionals, we might purchase more material. That is not funded, that's on us. We may pay for after-school intervention, we may pay for summer school intervention, that's on us. Right. Research
can't
would,
yeah, you
Go
can't
ahead.
always do that. One of the more recent ones, the state come back and said that they wanted students K to 3 tested for dyslexia. That required a lot of professional development. Our teachers had to be trained before they could even test for that.
we
This
didn't have the
is-
curriculum for that either.
So you have to buy it because they say you have to do it, and then you have to submit proofs, show your results of what you've done in that district, your student testing data and whatnot. They tell you what to do, basically.
So that's an example. Now, there are some, again, I want to go on the record saying if a student's on an IEP, we do get additional funding for that. But that's like a 3-tier, very small group or one-on-one. Yes?
The Butler County Educational Service Center
Yes?
hires people to work in schools.
Yes, and we pay for that. That's called a purchase service.
So does that happen here at Edgewood?
Yes.
Is that a savings to this district?
Not necessarily. It depends on the situation. If you need a full-time person, it's not always a savings. If you need a part-time person, it's a good way to do that. They're good. They have a wonderful partnership with us, and we appreciate everything they offer. You tell Mr. Brown he does a good job. Your superintendent over there. Yes. Chris, you had another question. You thought I was avoiding you, didn't you? I was for a minute. I was letting somebody else ask a question. You go ahead. What's up?
Okay, first question. I've got 3 of them, actually.
You ask one. Go ahead.
Okay, first one. Are all the schools inside the city, or are they out in the township?
Both. We have 7 Mile Elementary out in the township, preschool, and then everybody else is preschool. Kindergarten is 7 Mile. High school's considered Trenton, isn't it? Oh, I thought it was Trenton. See, I'm newbie. I'm a newbie. I'm
Inside
learning
city
tonight
limits.
too.
Inside city limit.
Oh, here we go.
Only Bayback's in Trenton.
One school's in Trenton.
Okay, so now I'm not sure how they work it on your guys' on their pay and everything. Now, do you guys get taxed by the city?
The employees that, yes.
So, okay, that's a question there, and that means, okay, when they look at, here I go, I'm doing the business aspect of it. When they're looking at salaries, when they're figuring it out, most of the people, most of the teachers and stuff are in the city. They're paying city taxes.
No. How many teachers do we have at primary?
Not here, in Ohio. When you look at the whole state of Ohio, when you look at their salary compared to other schools.
Okay, I'm not following you. Say that again. So in the state of Ohio,
Okay, most of the schools are within the city limits. So they are all paying city tax, whatever the city tax is, 3.5, whatever it is.
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
I'm just looking at that as a business aspect. Okay, wait, so we could pay a little bit less salary, and that means, don't beat me up, but I know what you're saying.
There's a few teachers in here that might. Where are you parked, mister?
I know. Hey, you guys taught me, so. But you don't pay, or like some of us pay, well, I don't want to be particular, but some places have to pay where they work at, and then they have to pay their.
Where they live.
Yeah.
So you're paying taxes where you live and where you work. I've had to do that before. I think we're all kind of in that situation depending on where we work. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Then, okay, now the other question is,
They get us coming and going. That's what that means. Go ahead.
what are we doing with the money? I know there's got to be money coming in from the different emergency centers. Where's that money going?
Emergency centers. Can you help me understand what that is?
Urgent cares.
Oh yeah, we get rent from that. That goes into our general fund for our students. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Patty, am I wrong?
No, it goes in
I've only been here
general
since
fund.
November. I'm hoping they all correct me because I thought most of our schools were in Trenton. So
It's about $17,000 a month. It does go into that general fund.
Okay, so is that considered for that $10,000 that they get per student?
yeah,
No, I'm just asking.
yeah. Our per pupil spending that goes in the general pot of what we
Yes,
pay for. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Good questions. That was 3. Wait. That's a 4th. We have. Let some other people ask. We'll come back to you. Go ahead. Yes. I hear you. That's our job. Trust me, we don't want to come out here and have these meetings. They're not fun. And no one wants to ask anyone to separate with their dollar. Our job is to be fiscally solvent. I'm very data driven. I have a track record. If you look me up, I'm data driven. I want to see results if we're going to spend. Yep. Okay. You say that now until we all come knocking on your door. We're doing some audits in transportation, cafeteria. We're going to be doing audits around learning. My big thing is when we have such little spending for school adoption material, I'm not surprised we don't have our indicators. The first place to look is, are we teaching the curriculum? If you don't have an ongoing curriculum adoption cycle to support your ongoing changes with standards that our state throws out about every 5 years, you have to have measurements to go with that. You have to have interventions to go with that. If you don't have a solid plan, that is directly linked to student learning. We need to do a better job in that. So you're going to see us putting a little more money there, a little less in staffing until we get where we need to be. We would love to say we're not going to come back for a while without knowing those unknowns. I would feel terrible to give you a promise and underdeliver. But I will give you a commitment. I will give you a commitment, and we can roll up our sleeves together and tackle the problem. Okay? I had another question, I think, back here. Oh, you're pointing. Okay, I'm going around the room. What else? Yes, sir.
I don't have a question,
Yes.
but I have a comment.
Okay.
I appreciate the information that you're giving out today. I moved here in '89, empty nester. Wasn't going to have any children in school.
And you have Raymond. Raymond or Roman? Roman.
But I also, my oldest granddaughter graduated from Edgewood in 2004.
Her youngster?
No, no, this is another child. But I've raised children all my life. But I really appreciate.
I thought you looked familiar. Yes. So you know I'm a lady of my word, aren't I? Yes.
I moved from Northwest, and that was going downhill when I moved. And I appreciate Edgewood. I never thought I would have a child here.
And you're blessed. You're blessed. Well, we appreciate your involvement, and we appreciate candid conversation, folks. This is what makes the world go round. We don't always have the answers, but I assure you we'll sit down together and problem solve. And something you'll see in the upcoming newsletter going out here in a week or two, we're putting together, I'm going to be working with a student advisory team next year. I just love them because they're so fresh and they give you real ideas and they're not worried about their evaluations and whatnot. But we're also putting together a community committee, and we're going to meet 4 to 6 times a year and talk about some of these issues. And we want to have a barometer. We want people to give us honest feedback. I mean, that's how we improve. Okay? We're all in this together, and we want the same outcome, and that's the success for our youngsters. Yes, sir.
I have a question about head count. Yes. Where are we at with student head count? Is there a big wave coming through?
Well, we're about 3,700, and we've been around 3,650 to a little bit over 3,700. I'm hearing there's a subdivision that may come in that could bring 80 houses. But will they all have kids in it? I don't know. I know, it's a real predicament, isn't it? If we pass it. Yes, ma'am. I like your positive thinking. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, we do.
And again, I'll go back and reiterate here, we just looked. We know about 13,000 homes in this district, and we looked at the number of those homes that actually had students coming to our schools. So that was huge in this. And like I said, we don't know if this will work. This is very new for us. As many years as I've been here, never done this before. We don't know.
And I'll jump in here and just say, so would it have been an 8-point-something mil? We don't know exactly where
10.
that would, a 10 mil?
Yeah.
What districts are passing 10 mils right now? I don't know of any. Matter of fact, I've always heard if you get over 5, good luck. So that's what we would have been putting on the ballot, a 10 mil or a 1% earned. Yes. Yes? No, let's give him the microphone. He has really good information.
Overall, we pay less tax through that 1% than you ever will with a property tax.
And those who are retired that live in there, and they're getting their property taxes raised, and they're retired. They can't afford to do that. But those who are getting their paying in, who are working, can afford the 1% versus the property taxes.
Now, were you planted in the audience this evening, folks? That was a really good answer. Thank you. Thank you. All right. What other questions do we have? Yes, ma'am. Yes. That's a good comment. Did you hear this, folks? The comment in the back said, there's been a bone of, I'm summarizing, you correct me if I get the summary wrong. There's been a bone of contention always when there's property tax in the past because renters do not necessarily pay the property. So it just depends. Again, do you like a 1%? Do you like property? Do you like this? Do you like that? It really depends on the house you live in. I don't know what your property value is. I don't know what your income is. You need to make that decision for yourself. And now I'm probably crossing the line. So we'll leave it at that. We can entertain 1 or 2 more questions. Yes.
When there's talk about decreasing the budget, is there talk about closing any of our buildings?
You know, there isn't talk today, but there has been talk, and you'll see on our website where there was talk about closing 7 Mile. And so that has been on the table before. It's not something on the table today, and I don't know if it'll be on the table tomorrow. That's not part of the 1.2 that I'm aware of. Board members, correct me if I'm wrong.
What I would just encourage you to do, stay involved. We hear you. We hear you. We're taking note. I've never seen to this level before trying to bring in this much community engagement. We're in this together, folks. We hear you. Be present. Make your voice heard. And what's important to you, like I said before.
And you're entitled to your opinion. We respect and value whatever that is. But we just want to have an upfront, transparent conversation so you can make the best decision possible for yourself and your household. Yes. Well, thank you. And part of that is we can share the problem or share the wealth. Whatever that is, we're in it together. That's the philosophy. Anything else? I want to thank you. Patty and I will be around if you want to come up and ask us anything individual. I want to thank you for your engagement this evening. We appreciate your feedback. I apologize up front if we didn't know every answer, but I assure you Dr. Thor has been taking notes. If you signed your email in, give us about 48 hours and we'll have a turnaround for you in those responses. And on that note, be safe and thank you very much for attending this evening.
Thank you.